Today, we're exploring a tale of power, temptation, sin, and ultimately redemption, the story of David and Bathsheba. Our story takes place in ancient Jerusalem around the 10th century BC, during the reign of King David. At this time, Israel was a powerful and united kingdom under David's rule. The city of Jerusalem, also known as the City of David, was the heart of the nation, both politically and spiritually. David, a man after God's own heart, had risen from being a humble shepherd to a mighty king. He was loved by his people and known for his military prowess and deep devotion to God. But even the greatest of men are not immune to temptation. During the time of King David, around the 10th century BC, Israel was a united and powerful kingdom, but the situation was complex and multifaceted. David united the 12 tribes of Israel, which had previously been loosely connected and often in conflict. This unification under a single monarchy helped to stabilize the region and strengthen Israel's position against external threats. David captured Jerusalem from the Jebusites, and he brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem, establishing it as the spiritual heart of the nation. He was the second king of Israel, succeeding Saul. He reigned for about 40 years, and his rule is considered a golden age for Israel, as he expanded the kingdom's territory. One evening, while walking on the roof of his palace, King David gazed upon the city below. From his vantage point, he saw a woman bathing, a woman of extraordinary beauty. Her name was Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite, one of David's loyal soldiers. Despite knowing that she was married, David's desire for Bathsheba overcame his sense of right and wrong. He sent messengers to bring her to the palace, and there he committed adultery with her. Soon after, Bathsheba sent word to David that she was pregnant. This act would set off a chain of events that would have devastating consequences for David, Bathsheba, and their families. After David's sin with Bathsheba, he faced a new challenge: how to cover up the evidence of his wrongdoing. To do this, David devised a plan to make it appear as though the child born to Bathsheba was Uriah's, not his own. David sent word to Joab, the commander of his army, asking him to send Uriah the Hittite back from the battlefield. Uriah was a loyal soldier who had been fighting for David in a protracted conflict. When Uriah arrived in Jerusalem, David greeted him warmly and inquired about the state of the battle and the welfare of the troops. David's intention was to encourage Uriah to go home and enjoy the comforts of his house, hoping he would sleep with his wife and thus believe that the child was his own. David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." This was a polite way of suggesting that Uriah should spend the night at home. But Uriah's response was far from what David expected. He chose to remain at the palace, sleeping at the entrance with the king's servants rather than going to his own home. When David learned that Uriah had not gone home, he asked him why. Uriah replied, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my lord Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." David's plan had failed. Uriah's sense of duty and loyalty to his fellow soldiers and the Ark of the Covenant prevented him from taking advantage of the comfort of home while his comrades were in the field. David, frustrated, tried to get Uriah drunk in hopes that this would lower his inhibitions and persuade him to go home, but even this failed to achieve the desired outcome. Realizing that his scheme was unraveling, David took desperate measures. He sent Uriah back to the battlefield with a letter to Joab, instructing him to place Uriah in the most dangerous part of the fighting and then withdraw the troops, leaving him exposed. This malicious plan ultimately led to Uriah's death, completing David's tragic attempt to cover up his sin. But David's sin did not go unnoticed by God. the prophet Nathan was sent to confront the king. But instead of directly accusing David, Nathan approached him with a parable, a story that would pierce David's conscience and reveal the depth of his wrongdoing. Nathan began, "There were two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him." Nathan continued, "Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for his guest." This story was simple yet powerful. It highlighted the gross injustice of a wealthy man exploiting a poor man for his own gain. As Nathan told the parable, David's sense of justice was ignited. Anger burned within him as he declared, "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity." David, unaware that the parable was about him, was quick to condemn the injustice. In that moment, Nathan turned to David and spoke the words that would cut through the king's heart. "You are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you, and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you all Israel and Judah, and if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes?" David, struck by the weight of his sin, confessed, "I have sinned against the Lord." Though God forgave David, the consequences of his actions were severe. The child born to David and Bathsheba fell ill and died, a punishment for David's sin. Yet, in this moment of sorrow, we see a glimpse of God's grace. Despite the tragedy, God did not abandon David and Bathsheba. They were blessed with another son, Solomon, who would go on to become one of Israel's greatest kings and the builder of the first temple in Jerusalem. Solomon's birth symbolized God's mercy and the possibility of redemption even after great sin. Please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who might need to hear this message, and don't forget to subscribe for more content that encourages and challenges your faith. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay faithful, and God bless.